Okay, hello, greetings and welcome. All right, so let's have a look at a bit of psychology of Qigong. When you're working with energy, you're really dependent on the feeling gate of the mind. Once that sense of feeling of energy has been developed, then you can look at taste and scent and sound and so forth. You can start engaging all the other gates. The feeling is the first one because it's the most easy. The group consciousness allows people to have gut instincts. It allows people to have deep feelings. It doesn't allow people to be clairvoyant. It doesn't allow people to be clairaudient. The group consciousness says that's not okay, and it's got a big boundary there. It's got a big block. So when you're engaging in Qigong work, you want to activate your intuition, your spirit sense of energy, to be able to feel energy. Once we've developed that, the next step is to be able to translate and understand what you feel. So we go from this, what internal martial arts world would call listening, where you really pay attention to the feeling of energy, and then you translate the energy. So that's the next stage of training. Once you translate the energy, then we move into looping back to what do we want to do with it. So we have a qualitative form of energy where we feel, listen, understand, and know it. And then we have a quantitative form of energy where we develop it. Now, your ability to translate something has a strong effect on your ability to control something. Because as you translate it, you open it up and you're able to tune in from a coarse, I can feel this, to a refined, I understand this. So that when you tune your mind to that particular feeling of energy, that frequency, and you understand it, then when you enliven it with life force and you start animating and amplifying that energy, you can do that in a much more refined way. So these stages of listening to translating before you start cultivating and building the energy is really, really important. It totally changes your outcome to move from listen through the translation phase into the cultivation phase. If you don't have the translation there, you end up with a very coarse, unrefined energy. But if you're breaking it all apart and getting to understand it, then you're able to really cultivate a very refined type of qi, or refined energy. So the basic listening stages of training is building the ball. You want to feel vital energy, focus your willpower on stretch, into the breath, into the space outside your body to activate the spirit senses. And as you condense the breath in the ball, electromagnetic energy starts to build, the life force energy builds, becomes fluidic, people feel magnetic quality between the hands, and then it becomes thick and heavier and slower as you tune the breath to move towards the qi stage. Now, when a person puts a force on you, and you use that life force feeling quality as a vehicle to connect to the person and read them and listen to them, you touch their base and use a tension line to enter into their body. You'll feel a line of tension. You'll feel a center of gravity of tension. You'll feel the center of gravity of the mass. And you'll feel the center of gravity of the balance. And you reference all this to the person's central axis if you're doing this in a Tai Chi type of way. The listening skills of Tai Chi are the coarsest types of listening skills. It's very unrefined because you don't need much data. Think about Tai Chi, it's just different types of tension and intent, and you compare that to, let's say, a healer who's tuning to all these qualities inside the person's body to bring them back into balance, or a reader, a tarot reader, a psychic who's tuning into all the stories and the past, the present, where the energy is moving into the future. It's much more refined and deep type of listening. Tai Chi is a type of raw, barbaric type of listening. It's very simplistic, very easy to develop. So it doesn't take a long time for the average person to develop that listening skill in Tai Chi. Now, one of the interesting parts about it is that intuition is a mechanically built framework. You have to build a psychological library, a catalog of information. So when you touch someone's tension on their bridge and you tap down to their feet, you write down on your whiteboard or I like to have the whiteboard on the side, or your journal, and I can feel his base. And by writing this down, you're cataloging in your subconscious mind. I'm writing this down because it's important enough for me to feel this more and more. I can feel his base. And you write down, I can feel the line of tension connecting to his base. And I can feel the center of gravity of that tension connecting to his base. I can feel his center of mass, where his weight is resting in the middle of the body. Is his mass leaning forward? Is his mass behind the central axis or in front of the central axis? Then I can feel his central axis. You want to touch someone and feel the line of tension. Is it in front or behind? So some people put the line of tension behind their central axis, and their mass is hanging in the front of their central axis. And these two balance each other out, so you have tension, pressure, and hanging dead-weighted mass on the front, and the central axis goes through the middle. You define these qualities. And then as the person moves their intent, I can feel the arising of intent. I can feel the moving of intent. I can feel his weight move as a wave. I can feel his body stretch. I can feel his body loosen. I can feel him emptying out the lines of tension when I touch him. I can feel his body rotate to the left. I can feel the body rotate to the right, and so forth. As you define all these listening qualities, you journal them and you catalog them. You want hundreds and hundreds of feeling qualities. And you're doing this while you're vital breathing. When you're vital breathing, you're in an open, larger mental space. The vital energy and astral energy open. You're intuitively sensitive to your environment. And as you catalog information in this way, your intuitive field of consciousness references like frequencies and experiences when you touch the next person. So you touch the next person and go, oh, there's similarities here. I can feel their base, I can feel their tension, I can feel their intent moving, and I feel the waves of force arising, I feel the muscles contracting, and I can feel breaks and tension across the shoulder, I can feel gaps in the line, and you define all these qualities. This psychology of cataloging listening qualities while vital breathing and maintaining open awareness builds your intuitive library. So the next person you touch, you know them. You already have these feelings in there. You go, oh yeah, I know those feelings. I know how this type of person functions. I can feel their intent coming, and you can put yourself in the right place at the right time. So it's intuition in this context, in the Tai Chi context, in the push hands context. This listening skill is a mechanically built process. You need to put yourself in the right psychological state, vital breathe, expand your mental space, open that feeling of energy out. Feel your partner through those lines of consciousness, through the life force. So you listen through those tension lines, you're stretching life force through them. The reason why we use this type of psychological state when you do listening versus just a normal consciousness touch is normal consciousness doesn't put your spirit to the fore. It's not dominated by your spirit senses. When you vital breathe and stretch your mind out, increase your mental space, you're increasing your potential to access your spirit and express your spirit. And this is no different to climbing up into the top of a mountain, looking out and going, wow, your mind just expands and you see a beautiful view, and something inside your spirit wakes up and there's a type of awe there. That feeling quality, you want to bring that to the fore. When you touch someone, whew, you go in with your spirit, you feel inside them. And you need to develop a personality to do this. If you're vital breathing, conducting through that personality, then you have an internal pathway to develop these skills. Okay, so make a very, very clear catalogue of feeling qualities. Now, if you're a healer, there's going to be an overlap between, oh yeah, the kidneys are a bit dry, oh there's a bit too much humidity and heat there, it's oh there's a bit of cold energy there, and you'll start to you know, pick up elemental qualities within your training partners. And when you pick up those things, let's say, you know, there's a big gap in the shoulder muscle, and you know, when they move from there to there, you go, oh, there's a big gap there, and there's a imbalance in the muscles, you've got to stabilize those and make the strength equalize across the shoulder. So you might do some loosening, shaking the person's arm to shake some tension out. You might do a bit of astral breathing to release. And then you might develop some exercise. Okay, let's do some handstands and just walk on your hands and do that for a few months, and then the shoulder becomes very stable and strong, and those gaps, strong and weak next to each other, disappear. They become equally balanced and stabilized in their strength. So you can make strategies for fixing things as you become sensitive to them. Okay, so we've gone through this process of listen and then translate. Now that translating ability, you need to build a big dictionary. You need to build a big reference library, a catalog of all these feeling states. You start listing all these qualities out. And these qualities are a reflection of what you want to listen to. What do you want to pay attention to? If you're a healer, it's going to be much more in that direction. If you're a psychic, it's going to be much more visual information. And it's like storytelling. And you're really looking at the person's history, their past stories, their present story, and the stream of where those stories are going, what direction they're leading. So there's a much more deep connection to all the sense gates. You've got to see, you've got to feel, you've got to hear, you've got to smell, you've got to taste, and develop a catalog of that ability. And that's why when you do something like Hermetics, there's a very profound level of practice on visualizing imagery, holding all the different smells in your awareness, building all these catalogs or libraries of information so that the spirit can just invoke them to the surface and reflect a like frequency of information which will become a part of your intuitive field so you can express other people's information. So you've got to practice a whole wide range of cataloging different base frequencies. So you go through the primary colors and you start mixing them and you create very vivid visuals, and your mind's able to take that data and reflect it back in resonance with other people's stuff when you're doing a tarot reading, for instance. So it goes into much more complex forms of using and activating your intuition on many different levels. For Tai Chi, we keep it really, really simple. It's a very, very simplistic form of listening. And that's why it's so easy. Anyone can go, oh, there's tension, there's bass, you feel it. And then next you do that 100 times and you touch someone, you have their base. You're right there on their feet. You can feel their toes move. If they want to move their body, their toes are going to move and you already got it. If you're vital breathing, slightly released of time. So the elasticity in the body and the emanation of energy in the body has a pre-signaling effect. So when a person's going to move, there's a radiance in their field, in their mind, and in their energy that signals that they're about to move. So the mind emits energy, the unconscious is emitting energy before the physical body moves into action. And when you're tuning in to people, you get a sense of, oh, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. You're in the right place at the right time because you're inside the vital field as you're listening to them. You have this advanced signaling system which starts to appear. Okay, so we've gone through this cultivating the listening exercises. We've gone through translating by holding vital energy open, cataloging, and then listen and translate starts to overlap and happen simultaneously together. And then we go to, okay, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to cultivate it? So if we want to take this further, once we've built the mechanical library, and we want to develop deeper listening and we want to cultivate power, then we've got to look at what is the personality, what we're developing. Listening energy, it's a type of consciousness. It's a skill unto it. It's an intrinsic energy unto itself. Translating ability, it's an intrinsic energy unto itself. Then in Tai Chi, people might go, okay, we've got to create this sticking energy. And some people would sticking energy first. You've got to learn how to stick to a person's base before you can listen to what's between your hand and their base. So that will come first in many people's training systems. And then the listening and translating qualities are there. And then a lot of people go, okay, now we've got to relax and sync. I've got to soften the energy back. Some people go, no, we've got to seize. As soon as you're in, you want to seize the joints, stick and get a seize there to capture. So this listening and translating ability will be happening underneath your sticking and seizing when you seize the joints before you issue. Now, the reason why we seize the joints and not the rest of the body, now there might be tension in the bicep. We don't seize the bicep, we seize the joint above and below that to control the tension. If you don't seize the joint, the person's going to move away from it. But if you seize the joint, they try to move, you've got them. So you seize the joints, not the points of tension. Points of tension are very, very changeable, where when you seize the joints, it is the function of change. People change by rotating and moving their joints. That's why you control the joint, not the center of tension. There's a misnomer, stick to the tension and then issue. Well, a person can get out of that. You stick to the joints around the tension and it's much more difficult for the person to get out when you issue. So this development process, we've got to look at what is the psychology and the approach you're using in how you develop your internal system. Every school of Tai Chi, every different internal art has a different type of sticking quality, different feeling, a different internal framework. You know, the Shaolin guys will have this more sinking quality, swallowing quality, sticking quality, shooting quality, sink, rise, swallow, shoot, all these different formulas that they use. That dramatically changes the outcome. It will depend on whether you're using an intentional model or a non-intentional model. We'll jump backwards and forwards between these two different models as we go. Okay, so we've gone from listening, we've gone into translating, and we've looked at those, their individual energies. We won't concern ourselves so much with the sticking and seizing for the moment. And translating, to go into cultivating energy and taking it deeper, there's a type of psychology of the mind with this. The first is that you recognize the part of the mind that is listening and translating. So there's a discernment quality inside that your mind is simply, there's an observer. And that observer, it has a layer of just, I am awareness, and then it has a layer of information flow, and then it has a layer of translating information flow, and then it has a layer of identifying with that information flow, and then it has a layer of intending and engaging that, and then it comes back to reformulating it, combining it all together to generate an outcome. So we have a multifaceted layers, and different esoteric systems break down the psychology of this usually into 4 simple layers. And the first one is the air element, the air pillar, the discernment of the mind itself. And the discernment of the mind has a polarity of non-intention, the observer, and of intending mind, the thinker. Then there's the water pillar, which it's sort of the empathic part of you that just feels people and identifies with people. I am what I feel. So if I feel angry, I am angry. And if that person's angry and I feel their anger, I might become angry and take on that quality because I feel it and identify with it. So this observing part generates a separation between the identity part. So that the air element keeps you sane. It goes, I can't take in all this information from all these people with all these emotions all the time. You just can't function that way. It's not sustainable. But there are people you love that you'll have that empathic connection, or sometimes it'll be a sympathy connection to them, and you'll identify very, very strongly with those feelings. Now, when we apply this to alchemy and Hermetic work and Tai Chi and internal arts, you feel energy. In order for you to work with energy, you have to identify, I am energy. I am life force. So when you open your joints, focus your breath into the stretch, into the ball, and then you identify this feeling of electromagnetic force, and then you say, I am life force, I am living mind, and then you start breathing, by making that statement, I am living mind, you've all of a sudden identified with what you're breathing. That energy starts to respond to you, and your will can influence it. So the fire pillar comes into play. You have all these types of listening, skill, and translating in the air pillar. Then you have this identification process in the water, that I am living mind. And then the will can express itself through what I am, living mind, and you start vital breathing. This identification of dissolving the separateness between you and what the energy you're working with allows you to work with the energy. So when a person puts a force on your body and you connect it to your base and you're touching their base and you stretch it into the fascia and connect it into the lode, and you might transform it into the astral, you have to identify with the force. I am what I feel. And you're feeling your partner's tension, you're feeling their intent, you're feeling their mind substance, and you say, I am living mind, you become the life force which animates their power. You become the life force which is conducting their energy. You become the life force which is animating their mind. And this is really the platform of power for an internalist. When you make that statement, I am living mind, you're the living mind underneath their power. So when you relax them into your mental space, and then you start doing your mechanical tricks of going, okay, I'm going to load that into the fascia, I'll transform it into the chi, or I'll condense them in the drum of the dantian, or whatever model you want to use, or send it to the ground in a mental vacuity pattern, so that you can pull all the three bodies open. There's this acceptance that you are what you wish to influence. And if your listening doesn't accept, it can't transform, change, and work with the incoming force. That means you'll be in opposition to the force, not in harmony with the force. And this is a really, really big problem that happens in let's say, wrestling and more the external arts, is that you're in opposition with your opponent, that you're competing with your opponent. In internal arts, you're not competing with anyone. You're in harmony with them, and if they're trying to hurt you, you're just a mirror which reflects the hurt back on them. So there's this very, very different type of psychology. You're harmoniously moving, you are living mind, and absorbing the forces and reflecting them in accordance with what you're given. So this changes all these, the psychological framework. You're not competing with the person in front of you, you're harmonizing with the person in front of you. And this is what gives you a lot of keys to success in Tai Chi, is this quality of coming into harmony with the energies and forces around you. Now, whether you're a healer, you're bringing a person into harmony. If you're a tarot reader, you're bringing your mind into harmony with what you see, so you can get clarity on translating the listening and relaying it to the person who you're doing the reading for in a way that benefits them. Okay, so let's continue. 4 bases of power. There's the aspects of air element: discerning, thinking, translating, understanding from a mental level. Then there's identity. I am the object. I am living mind. I am energy. I am the force that the person's trying to project onto me. And that harmonizing with that allows you to transform and change it. So there's an identity in the water element. Water element generates cohesion with all living things. What makes things stick together, harmonize, 2 drops of water connect as one. It's the cohesive force of the universe. It's what keeps things together. Fire element is the expanding force of the universe. It's a repelling force. It's what expands and pushes things out. That's why the sun radiates light. But it also has gravity. It's got a contracting force. So we have this inward force, water, and a radiating force of fire inside all things. Whether we're talking about a molecular level, there's an inward force and there's an outward force. These need to be understood. The inward force has this quality of identity and acceptance for it to arise. There has to be a certain degree of resonance between 2 things for them to cling to each other. Otherwise, they're not in resonance. They're just not going to cling. They're not going to stick. So when a force gets put on you, your mind has to be in resonance with the force. You have to recognize this is an expression of living mind. And then you say to yourself, I am living mind. What happens? You absorb the force. You harmonize with it, you expand your mental space, you expand your astral vital space, and you work with the force and you play with it, and you bounce the person. Someone who's harmonized with incoming forces can regulate and control them and transform them. And this takes us into the earth pillar. Now the earth pillar is the alchemical changing of state. Once you accept something as being a part of your mind and you're in vibrational resonance with it, and you apply your will to move it, now you can apply sung, you can apply relaxation, you can transform because you're in harmony. So you can take that energy from a muscle state and then put it into a fascia state. You can take that energy and relax it from a fascia state, tune it to a life force state. You can release time on it and transform it from a vital jin to an astral qi, because it just needs to be slowed down for that to happen. That's why the Tai Chi form looks so slow when people are training, because they're releasing time and jin is transforming to qi. Now ironically, you don't have to be super tuned to vital energy to cultivate qi. You can just train the mind to relax the body and slow everything down, and qi will start to cultivate. If you have the right mental space and the right openness in your mind, you can make internal Tai Chi principles function. But you'll find your mind will move in, I got it, now I lost it. I got it, because I lost it, and then you lose it. And then you'll find yourself cultivating very distinct feeling qualities to keep it and get it. But you won't understand what they are, how they work, what's the lawfulness, what's the metaphysical framework of it, and that's the problem. Only students of metaphysics who really study, okay, there's vital energy inside of time and space, there's astral energy of qi, which is a slower time continuum, there's all these astral spiritual realms that exist underneath that, and then the mental body is released of space. It's composed of a different thing. The spirit is composed of a different substance, the astral and physical worlds. Then the akasha, the emptiness underneath things, and how to enter that, how to collapse your mind to that particle level so you're so small you'll move with the particles in and out of form, move into emptiness, back into form. There's a certain amount of speed of growth that happens with understanding. Knowledge is power. If you don't understand, you've got to collapse your mind to that tiny space and match these particles appearing and disappearing. How can you experience akasha? You simply can't. It will happen as a byproduct of samadhi after a decade or so of really solid practice. But it doesn't need to take that long. If you understand, make your mind smaller and smaller, equanimous and more still, and just keep collapsing inwards until your mind reaches that level, you get sucked into akasha. Your mind follows what is, the natural rhythms of creation. So studying internal martial arts, Qigong as a metaphysical science, allows you to train much more efficiently. You focus your attention on things that produce results, not on silliness of, I'm just going to stand here all day and wait for something to happen. That's an expression of ignorance, because there's no, what does the mental body do? What does the astral body do? What's the personality of the energy? What's the physical mechanics? What do I pay attention to? And what's the time-space continuum of what I'm doing? When's the best time to do that Qigong? You have to define what the mental body does. You have to define clearly what the astral personality is. And you have to define very clearly what the physical mechanics are to function internally, to make these things work. Never tell a student to just stand and wait for something to happen. That's disrespectful and ignorant, because you're wasting people's time. Mental space, your mental body regulates space and time. Now, it controls what frequency you tune into. If you're doing a moon exercise, you look at the moon. That's the frequency. Your mental body projects, looks at the moon and tunes in. That is the frequency. You are breathing, let's say, around the full moon. So you vital breathe what you feel emanating from the full moon, and you might have a personality of love. So you pull the energy of the moon, you bring it into this personality's reference point of love, you fuel the love, your mechanics, you pull the joints open to encourage, like you're holding a baby, and then you cultivate this feeling quality of love around the full moon. Your mental body has a role, your astral body has a personality and it's mechanical, and your physical body has a mechanical fascia state of how you would actually hold a baby. And then these three synchronize together to form a particular type of energy, and when you practice that Qigong, you build and feel love. The energy builds, accumulates, and it's got a substantial form, and it's an instantaneous. I'm doing this right, I'm feeling this happen. If you're doing it wrong, nothing is happening. It's instantaneous. It's not something that happens later. If you stretch your joints, focus your breath through the joints and put it into the space, the second you do it right, oh, there's energy. The moment you do it right, there's energy. If a person's not energetically sensitive, they just have to tune their mind more outside of their body. People who are not energetically sensitive are usually too stuck inside their body, and that's why they can't feel energy. They're stuck to their physiology, basically, to the physical senses. Put your mind in that space and just concentrate more on outside your body, and that fluidic quality arises. The moment you're doing it right, you have an experience. Okay, so this psychology of training, it goes into these three levels of mental, astral, and physical. Every exercise you do, you have to define what are the body mechanics. So if you're working within the Hermetic framework, the body mechanics are going to be fire element, expanding the joints; water element, pulling the joints, plucking the joints; air element, floating for fast activity like running and jumping and mountain climbing; and then earth element, grounding yourself, sinking, letting gravity pass through you. And now you can see an automatic problem. Sinking makes you heavy and clunky. Your feet don't move well if you're sinking. And that's why Tai Chi people have such poor footwork, because they're constantly making the legs heavy and grounding out. So even when you watch the top masters do their Tai Chi form, it's sort of like they've got clunky legs. They're not walking like a cat. They're too heavy. And this comes from focusing on the body mechanics of hanging the muscles, opening the joint, but just settling down and coming to resonance with gravity. And this is a foundation exercise for developing structure. When you do the earth element body mechanics, you get very grounded, very strong mechanics between the mental, astral, physical cohesion. Everything links, and it's much difficult to be moved. People can't push you over, and that's a good thing for Tai Chi. But this is just the beginning. You need to be practicing pulling the joints open to magnetic states, pushing the joints open to electric states, and plucking the joints up to float, run, and move fast. And then find an equanimity in akasha, wuji, in between all that to reflect the function of what you need for the application. Okay, so let's go a bit deeper. Once you've got a clear understanding of the function of the mental body, the function of the astral body, the function of the physical body, you've broken your physical mechanics down into the elements of fire, air, water, and earth, and you look at which mechanical framework is most appropriate. Then we go, what personality do you want to express? And that's often where you start, and then decide on your body mechanic. So before we looked at the moon exercise and cultivating love, it's a water element. So you use the water mechanic of gently pulling the joints open. Water has a very broad spectrum. Love has a very tight spectrum, comes underwater. So we fine-tune from the gross water element to the refined water of just, that's how I hold a baby. You pick a child up and you love it, and you have this sense of nurturing, and it's very reflective in the way the fascia and muscles are very gentle, very soft, very loving. Your personality is protecting, nurturing, caring, and all these things are coming through the astral chi. It's a personality. Then when you put the water element into that personality and feel it through your body mechanics and your mind being in resonance with the moon, you have these three things coming through. That's an expression of the water mechanics refined to a very particular personality of the water element, and then the mind fueling itself through the moon and the gravitational field of the moon, the way it affects the water of the planet, and you passing that through your three bodies, your three dantians, to generate a particular outcome. You do the same with air element, do the same with fire element, same with earth element. So you need to clearly define all those aspects for your training to train well. Now, if let's say you're doing something that's more mental, like okay, you're a writer or you're an academic, you're a teacher, and you need to get clarity of vision within a particular concept or idea. To get this clarity and vision, the mental body has to occupy more space than the idea or the vision you want clarity on. So these types of intrinsic energies, they're not so much of a body mechanic, but more of a mind mechanic and a feeling mechanic. But the body will support this just by simply stretching upwards to create space. If you're heavy and down, your mental body is going to contract. So you have a basic structure of floating and stretching everything upwards. And from there, you move into how you feel by stretching everything upwards, and you expand your energy. Now you go into your mental body. You look at the problem and you stretch your awareness outside of the problem. Now, this is a type of peripheral vision of the problem, not a focal vision. If your mind focuses in on the problem, it contracts, and it will stick to the problem and engage it from the level of the problem itself. You want to go to a level beyond the problem. So for these types of intrinsic energies, what we do is we release space, we make a mind bigger than the problem, we release time, we move it, we do the astral breathing to soften our relationship to the problem and pull all the layers apart. And then we release time and space together, and we do akasha breathing into the essence or the heart of the problem. And that creates a relationship to the problem that gives you very, very interdimensional view of it. You'll see things, this problem comes from here and it goes there. This problem has these bits of information stuck to it. This problem has all these emotions inside of it, and my relationship to the problem is emotional, not intellectual. And you'll start to see the problem from all these different angles. And as you start to see them, you write them down. You journal them. I like to have the whiteboard, and you write on the whiteboard all these bits of data. And what happens is, as you write down all that information, you may use an A3 big pad, and you write down, you just blue tack them all onto the wall so you can look at the problem, create bigger space in the problem, and the solution appears. Your unconscious organizing power requires space, a release of time and release of space in order to function at a level of genius. Now you look at how many billions of bacteria that your body conscious organizes. There's more bacteria than blood cells. And it tells it all what to do and keeps it all in harmony and keeps you working. Your body consciousness is very, very intelligent. Your normal consciousness is far less than 1%. And you could put a bunch of zeros in 0.00000, and that's how much conscious intelligence we actually have. Our conscious intelligence is very, very small. And you compare a very low IQ person on the bottom of the curve to the functioning of that very same person's body intelligence to organize the breathing, the pumping of the heart, and the function of the body, and the physiology, and the complexity of the DNA. That intelligence is off the chart. You make that comparison, you think, well, no, we don't use 5% of our brain. It's just a minuscule little fraction. We have that much intelligence underneath. So how do we access this intelligence? Well, to dissolve the veil between conscious and unconscious mind, in one word, is equanimity. Equanimity is stillness. So when we look at this problem, we want to create an intrinsic energy of problem solving and understanding things, we have to define the problem very, very clearly, and then look at it, and then release time, release space into equanimity. And as it opens that veil where the mind has a conscious perception of the problem, disappears, it dissolves, and then we see how the unconscious mind sees the problem. And the unconscious mind looks at things in a state of solutions, of outcomes, as this is the way things are built, this is the way things function. It doesn't look at things as problems. It looks at things as the way things are. And our relationship to something as being a problem to start off with, and we're searching for a solution, is already a big part of the barrier. So the key to doing these types of exercises, releasing time and space, is that you're looking at solutions, not problems. So that's part of dissolving the barrier. But the release of time and space and going into that state of equanimity when you look at something, that veil between the conscious perception and the unconscious perception shifts. So you start looking at reality as, oh, that's the lawfulness, and this is the way it is. So you see the solution rather than seeing the problem. Okay, so cultivating stillness comes to the heart of everything we do. If you're training Hermetics, going through the initiation text, every exercise has an external form of the fabric of the exercise, the process. The byproduct of practicing it is underlying stillness of the mind as you concentrated on it. And then the outcome that you're seeking comes through dissolving the veil between the process of practice, the stillness, to lead you into the outcome. So you're harvesting stillness through every single exercise. And as you go through those 72 or so exercises, you've got 72 different types of stillness which are arising, and it's dissolving boundaries between conscious and unconscious mind. It's dissolving boundaries between your astral ego and your awareness of it. It's dissolving boundaries between the awareness of consciousness itself and spirit consciousness. So we have all these different levels of consciousness and unconscious mind that start breaking apart. And those veils, as they start break, are subject to laws of rhythm, that your mind will move in and out of these states. And as your mind moves in and out of these states, you'll have moments of genius. Now, these moments of genius, they're not moments that are very, how do we put it? They don't log themselves into your memory because they're not a function of memory. They're a function of spirit. So when you connect to your genius, it's very important to have a method of mental noting. When you dissolve the veil between the conscious and unconscious mind, we are not normally conscious of the unconscious. So you have to have a method of taking this data, this information, this connection to your inner genius, and bringing it into form so that you can use it and function within it. And we use mental noting for this skill, where you just make a very gentle imprint. It's almost like a hologram of a dream, where you just take a snapshot. And then we take a series of snapshots, and then as we come back in the normal consciousness, we keep a connection to those snapshots and a connection to that deep state, and you let your pen express itself. You write down your mental notes. So you're still you have a certain degree of connection to that unconscious state while you're writing, and your mental notes, those dots on the line, you connect all those dots, you run it through your pen, and you can bring information from that inner genius, that deep body consciousness intelligence, that deep astral consciousness intelligence, your spirit intelligence, and move that across into form so that you can get your solutions to your problems. So all these different types of intrinsic energies, whichever one you're developing, requires a framework of intelligence. You've got to think about these things, break them down, structure them, and understand intellectually, understand with your feeling, and understand with your application how to put them together. The basic training for any internal martial art, for life itself, is Initiation Hermetics. Now, that book was written a long time ago, and so it was written in a certain culture with a certain presentation. It really needs to be modernized. But that writing allows you to understand the fundamentals of your relationship between your mind, your ego, and your body, how to cultivate and develop that, and how to make sense of Qigong, how to make sense of Tai Chi, how to make sense of metaphysics. And it has very, very deep roots to activate your intuition to understand science, not only intellectually, but intuitively, to be able to feel how things function. So when you look at a mathematical formula, that you have a part of your mind which thinks about the mathematics, and then you have a part of your mind which feels the mathematics in function. And it's no different to when you know, kids in elementary school, and you know, they put 4 apples on the table, and you give the kid 2 apples, and then you go plus 2 more apples. How many apples do you have? There's 4 apples. The kid picks the apples up and feels it. And there's a type of functional life knowing about what 2 plus 2 is in the context of apples. Now, simplistic as that is, when you feel mathematics, it will reflect itself in function. And it might be in music, and you'll feel the music, the mathematics of it. It might be within nature. You'll feel the sacred geometry of nature, and you'll sense the mathematics in it. If you studied the mathematics and looked at its connection to nature, it'll stimulate resonant feelings. So this feeling is a way of translating dry math into the genius of creation of nature. And there's a bridge that gets formed. When you dissolve that veil between conscious way of thinking about something to how the unconscious mind applies it and makes it functional, we need to dissolve that veil for the information to come across and for you to have these experiences. The body consciousness and the spirit does not think of things in an intellectual type of framework, the way we have thoughts. It's an expression of function and the mind substance of how things live out. How the unconscious mind does not verbalize things. We teach ourselves to verbalize. It's a different language. It's a language of feeling. And when you want to develop translating Qi, translating Jin, translating power in an internal martial art, you need to translate it through an interpretation of feeling. And that you'll feel the function, you'll feel the form and the function blend together to create something outside of the intellect. So this is where this whole bridge from listening to translating to how you cultivate and develop the energies bridges across. If you want to get good at these skills, have a look at that book, Initiation to Hermetics. It gives you basic life skills, how to train your mind, how to train your astral body, how to train your physical body. And this book needs to be rewritten, and it needs to be put into a modern application. So if you're a golfing coach, rewrite the initiation text in the format of how you use those skills to teach golf. If you're a tennis coach, rewrite it. How would you teach tennis in a hermetic way? You don't have to mention the word hermetics, you don't have to mention the word magic, but all the basic framework, the psychology, the energy, the body mechanics, all those fundamental ideas are being laid out there for you to take it and develop it and make training systems out of it. Now, of course, before you make a training system, you need to apply it and become very good at it first. You've got to develop proficiency. To develop proficiency, you have to have a deep, strong intellectual understanding. You have to start applying that understanding, feeling it out, and developing your own way, your own method. Okay, so I think this video is getting long enough. I hope this helps on getting an understanding of the psychology of internal martial arts and Tai Chi and putting the pieces of this puzzle together. If you've got this far in the video, you might be interested in having a look at my Vimeo channel, where I go into a lot more detail and break things down. We have a channel on Hermetics, on Tai Chi and Qigong, and I post to that weekly. And most questions that are given to me over email, I post those answers to those questions on that Vimeo channel. So if you're interested in this type of information, you're quite welcome to have a look at that. Thank you for your time, and I'll catch you on the next video.